pistol by my side.
The explosive knowledge that Lord Monckton has is amazing. And you know I don't get guessed up here and kiss up to them. When I read his reports, his essays, when I look at his documentation, when I see him speak on television or radio, the way he lays it out is so amazing because it's such a huge subject. And today he's going right at the fraud, and he was finishing up with the fraud and the criminal investigations and how it's premeditated fraud to establish a collectivist world government controlled by large financial interests that literally are setting themselves up as emperors of the planet. And you were finishing up, sir, but in the time we've got, I then want to get into the fact that you went and demanded and bent the will of these Copenhagen UN bureaucrats to cough up the latest secret version of the treaty with taxes on money, financial transfers. I mean, this is off the charts. Then I want to get your take on the propaganda on the ground there. I want to get your take on what all the scientists are out there talking about, how many people will die and starve to death if even a small of the, amount of this is implemented, what the biofuels has already done. I mean, this is so monstrous. Please continue.
Right. Where would you like me to start? You got to.
Well, you got cut off by the break. You got cut off by the break getting into the fraud. But I want to.
Yes, I was just saying that I've had these two eminent professors who've asked me to put a case to the police, and as soon as I get back from this conference, I will be going to see the senior police officer, the police superintendent in the East Anglia Constabulary, investigating this matter. I will be laying their reports for him. I will be asking for a 2-hour briefing so that I can brief him on the background to this fraud. Because, you know, if you're a police officer and you're not a climatologist, and somebody comes in and says, look, these people are lying and they're making up data, you'd never just believe it. You need to be properly briefed. And I'm hoping they're going to let me brief them on this so that they can understand just how monstrous is the manufacturing of data. Let's just take, for instance, the EPA's decision to try and say that carbon dioxide is an endangerment to human health under the Clean Air Act.
And it's being announced. It's being announced to coincide with Copenhagen.
Absolutely. Of course it was announced to coincide with Copenhagen. And this is clear politicking, again, of the worst kind. But the technical document on which that is based contains a graph lifted from a UN document and not checked, which pretends to suggest that the rate at which global warming is happening has been accelerating over the last 150 years, and particularly in recent years, in the last 25 years. Now, that graph is based on a well-known scientific fraud, it's a statistical fraud, in fact, called the endpoint fallacy, where you take a stochastic data set. That's one where you have to guess which way it's going to jump next. Temperature records are like that. It doesn't follow an ordered curve. It jiggles up and down a lot. And stochastic data sets like that are highly sensitive to precisely the point at which you start and end your trend line. And the UN has used this fact to try to convey an entirely false, entirely bogus and fraudulent impression, which has been recited over and over again by ignorant politicians, that the rate of warming is itself accelerating, and the EPA, instead of checking independently, as I wrote and told it to do, instead just lifted this material out of the UN's, as we now know, thoroughly tainted documents without bothering to check it. And guess who was the lead author of the part of the UN document which produced this bogus graph? It was none other than one of the conspirators in the ClimateGate scandal. So we can tie all these people together in a series of frauds that now links in the EPA itself. And because the director of the EPA did not respond, she didn't even answer the submissions that I and many others put in, she herself is now going to be indicted for fraud because she's made herself part of the fraud by being warned that she was relying on documents that were themselves fraudulent, such as this graph, which is plainly fraudulent. And we know she used it because it's in the technical document that she published. And instead of withdrawing that, putting in a supplementary document saying we still believe we're right, but we can't rely on that graph anymore, she has done nothing about it. She has therefore become part of a very serious international scientific and financial fraud, and she will have to go to jail.
Amazing. Lord Monckton, is this not, as many researchers and scientists are billing it, the greatest scientific fraud of history? I mean, they're going for total world government, a takeover of the entire economy, total control of society. It's a fraud by design. They weren't mistaken. They knew it was a fraud. Answer that question on the other side of this quick break, and then we're going to go over the treaty, over what's happening in Copenhagen. He is there, and we're going to give you his official website.